Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to have a look at how we white balance an image. Okay, so one of the things we'd be looking for when we're doing white balance is areas of the image that we would expect to be white. And there's a couple of different ways of doing this, some automatically and then some by actually manually adjusting a white balance of certain parts of the image. Okay, so let's just take a look at the automatic features of Photoshop first. So if we go to Image, we've got Auto Tone, Auto Contrast and Auto Color. Okay, so if we hit auto color, then it will attempt to neutralize the whites in that image. So if we go back now, one thing about the automatic features here, and that is auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color, is that when you're using them, they're basically working on the image itself. Okay, so this is a destructive way of working. So we're changing the original image rather than working on the image non-destructively, which would mean using an adjustment layer to actually make those color adjustments. We also have the original Photoshop tools up in the image menu as well. So if we go to Image, Adjustments, we've got brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, and then things like vibrance, hue, saturation. But we won't be using the options from the menu bars. We're going to be using the adjustment layers, which we can find down here on the bottom right of the layers panel. Okay, so this little button here is for adjustment layers, and then we also have them here in the adjustments panel. If you don't see these panels because accidentally you, for example, close something like the adjustment layer, go to Window, Workspace, check you're on Essentials, and then go to Reset Essentials, and that will pop everything back in the original spot. So if we add a levels adjustment layer in the first instance, okay, we get a series of options here, okay, and we have the option to sample an area of white, so a white point in the image, okay, and that will set that part of the image to pure white. Okay, let's just take a step back, and you can see what's happening here is I'm making adjustments on this layer, so the original image is still intact. Okay, so we can make automatic selections here for the black point. So we can find an area of the image that we would expect to be black, and we can adjust the contrast of the image accordingly. Okay, so it's balancing the image and then making it black as well. Okay, so you can see here that we've made those adjustments. It's kind of pushed the image a little too far, and if it has, and we're just wanting to use the automatic adjustments here, we can drop that back. So it's a layer, it has opacity, so we can just drop that back and it will apply that color balance in increments from 0 to 100. Okay, so we can adjust what we've done with a slider. Okay, so the levels here, if we want to get the levels panel back up here, we can just double click on the levels button here. Okay, and then we can continue to adjust. So we've looked at the automatic options here on the left. If we want to reset this panel, so we want to reset the levels adjustment layer, we can come down to this little hooked arrow at the bottom of that panel here. Okay, so if I just click back, it will then send that levels layer back to its original state, so unadjusted. We have some presets to work with here. So if we click here, we can make the image darker, increase the contrast, and then some other options for increasing the contrast. We can lighten the shadows. So if we want to have more detail in the shadows, this can often be useful for printing. So if you want to get the detail in printing and you don't want to have over inking, especially on an inkjet printer or a laser printer, then lightening the shadows, so making them have less black in them, is often something that can work well. You need to experiment with it, but it can work well. We can have the image lighter, the midtones brighter, and so on and so forth. Okay, we can also make our own custom adjustments as well. So let's go to default. So we'll go back to the beginning. If we come to the RGB panel here, then we have the option to adjust the color in this image. Okay, and we have the option to adjust the red, green, and blue altogether, or the red, green, and blue individually. Okay, so what will happen if we adjust them all together is that we'll adjust the darkness, the contrast, or the brightness of the image. So this histogram that we're seeing here is the color information of the image from black, okay, along the left-hand side here, through to the middle gray, and then through to the white on the right-hand side. Okay, so if we move this middle pointer and we drag it all the way to the right, okay, we're moving all this color information that was in the lighter grays towards white into the darker area of the image. So this is from 0 to 50% now. So we've moved all that color information. If we now drag this back, you can see we lighten up the image by moving more information into the lighter areas of the image, so between mid-gray and white. So let's put that back to 1 at the middle. If we drag the left-hand slider in, okay, we're actually clipping parts of the image. So you can see the areas where we had kind of detail in the gray here, up in the top of this helicopter. We're now losing that detail and it's all becoming completely black. Okay, and as we do that more, we get a color adjustment accordingly. Okay, so if we now lighten that up, the middle, you can see it gets lighter. If we come across the white and we drag this to the left, okay, we start to bleach out areas of the image, and you can see you lose some of the detail in the edge here where it's white on white. Okay, so basically the one thing you might want to think about carefully before you do it, it depends on the effect you want, is whether you want to clip the black or the white. So as we move this white pointer past this point, we're basically making all that color information, so detail in the image, we're making that into pure white. So we're washing out the image somewhat. Okay, let's drag that to the right. And the same for the black. So if we drag this to the right, we're basically losing color information. We're losing detail in the image as we do that, which could be what you want, but you just need to be aware that's happening. The slider down here at the bottom changes the range of the output level. So if you don't want any black in your image, we can drag this to the right, and basically our black point is now at gray, so it's washing out the image. Okay, so you may have seen some web pages where they have a background image and they've got this kind of washed out look so that they can place text over the top of it without it contrasting against some black, for example, in the middle here. Okay, and then with the white, if we drag this, okay, if we wanted to put white type on top of this image, then this would be a great way of just kind of dropping back all that white information and then placing white text on top, for example. There's one example of that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually go to Window and Info, okay, and we'll bring up the information palette here. So I'm going to drag this out so we can always see it. And you can see you've got some information for the image. We've got red, green, and blue values for wherever my pointer is, and also CMYK values for wherever my pointer is, and then position. Okay, so if we want to know where our mouse is specifically in the image, then we can adjust the position. We've got width and height, but we don't have a selection, so that's not highlighted. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go down to the color picker. Okay, we're going to click and hold on that, and then we're going to add a color sampler. So you'll notice as I start clicking here in the white areas of the image that I'm getting measurements of the red, green, and blue values at those particular points popping up. Okay, so I'm going to add these 3 points, and I'm going to add 1 point at the black point down here. Okay, so just double check that I've got that in the right spot, and I can hover over it with the same tool and move it to the area that's most black in the image. Okay, so it's probably somewhere around here. So with red, green, and blue values, the higher the value, the brighter the color. So where the values here for point number 4 are 10, 5, and 2, it's very close to black. It's not quite black, but it's very close to black. Okay, and you can see if we jump to here and we push this up, then our new values for that point are 0. Okay, so it's pure black now. Okay, as is probably much of that other area of the image here. So what we're looking for here in the white areas of the image, and a little bit in the black as well, is that the image is balanced. Okay, so if we zoom out a little now, okay, so I've got my 1 point on the helicopter rotor here, my 2nd point here, and then my 3rd point here. Okay, and basically what I'm looking at is in my white values here, I've got values that aren't all equal. Okay, so if we have equal values, then we will have white or gray or black. Okay, if I drag this point down here, so it's right at the bottom, the slider there, and then start moving this point, you can see that the grays I'm getting are all equal numbers. So 103, 103 is a pure gray, and then as we get closer to white, we've got all equal numbers. Okay, if we start to add some color into there, you can see, so it's red at this point in time, then you can see we've got different numbers there. Okay, so it's more red, it's a pinky, so the red number is higher than the green and the blue. So that's essentially what's happening with red, green, and blue. We're mixing those 3 colors, with 0 being black, and then when all the numbers are at 255, okay, the color is white, as you can see here. Okay, let's cancel out of that. Okay, so we've got our numbers here. So basically we want to get these numbers as close to one another as possible. Okay, so you can see we want to reduce the amount of red in this image. This image has a lot of red in it. All the red numbers, apart from number 3, which is down here, which is kind of in the bleached out area, have a higher number of red. So 200 red here, 182, 168. So we need to work on this. So it's basically a yellowy image. Red and green on screen will mix to make yellow. Okay, so if we bring up our slider here, then this is where we can start to work in the individual color channels. Okay, so if I grab the red, okay, I want to decrease the amount of red in the highlights, so in the white areas of the image. So if I drag this slider with red selected here to the right, you can see that my red number here is dropping down. Okay, so I'm pulling it closer to 185 here for those numbers. Okay, so I can either now, so I've got these pretty close, so 162 and 166 are pretty close, and this has popped off a little bit, but that's okay. So here now, we want to then either increase the amount of blue in that part of the image or start to match red and green to the blue. So I'm going to increase the blue. So I'm going to work on the blue here and see if I can't get a neutral image based on that. So if I drag my blue slider to the left, so basically I'm increasing the amount of color information in the highlights here to around 182. So the point number one is my rotor fin here. You can see now if I turn this on and off that this is my image before and this is my image after. Okay, so my image before, which is kind of a yellowy, and then my image after, which is kind of neutralized. So I've used those color pickers to neutralize the image by matching up these numbers. So 182, 182, 182, and then these are close here, and then this highlight across here is a little out, but actually it's not too close to the helicopter, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I think overall this is looking a lot better than it did before. Okay, so I've lost a lot of that yellow in the image. Okay, so that's how to do a manual white balance. Okay, and the nice thing, as we mentioned before about this, is that we can moderate it. So we can go to our layers panel and then decrease or increase the amount of balance that we're getting. So basically reducing or increasing the amount of adjustment we're putting into that layer. Okay, that's a brief overview of balancing color manually.